Hi guys, this is Sade from Sadie Saves the Day, and today I have a very special review. I have the QoR watercolor review. The people over at QoR were very generous and they sent me their 12 introductory color set in addition to 2 other colors that I asked for. The first color is Dioxazine Purple PV23. The next is Sap Green PG36, PR101 and PY150. Those are the 2 additional colors. Now this is the introductory set. It comes in a little tin and it has all of the colors on the back. They have it in a bunch of different languages and little swatches on the front so you can see the colors. And this sleeve, and then you open it up and there are all the colors, and the top has a little sheet telling you about the QoR watercolors and a little color chart with all of the colors in their lines so that you can pick out more if you want. They're really pretty. And then all of the tubes are there in a little paper insert. So first is Nickel Azo Yellow, then Hansa Yellow Light PY3, Quinacridone Gold Deep PO48, Quinacridone Magenta PR122, Permanent Alizarin Crimson PR177, Pyro Red Light PR255, Phthalo Blue Green Shade PB15:3, Ultramarine Blue PB29, Viridian Green PG18, Burnt Sienna Natural PBR7, Payne's Gray PB15:3, PBK7, and PV19. And last, Yellow Ochre Natural PY43. So I took out the little insert and I started trying to put the colors in the order that I would prefer them, which is mostly the order that they came in, but I like to put my earth colors in between the yellows and oranges, since they're basically just desaturated yellows and oranges, and reds sometimes. And at the very end is Payne's Gray. So this is how I ordered them. So the first color I'm swatching is Hansa Yellow Light. It's a really bright yellow. It's almost green. I'm not really a biggest fan of the PY3 as a yellow, but I know that it's really common in a lot of sets. It has a pretty high dispersion and it's pretty strong in the mass tone. The color also looks very transparent. Unfortunately, I forgot to put the lines for testing the transparency, so I'm going to do them right above these swatches in a little bit. Nickel Azo Yellow PY150. This is one of my favorite yellows. It starts out very orangey, which is really interesting, almost like a yellow ochre, but then you can see it dilutes out into this kind of sunny yellow. Dispersion is pretty high, and the mass tone is very saturated and vibrant. Once again, basically looking kind of like a yellow ochre. These colors just really fill up any space that you give them. Next is my favorite color of this, just because it's so soft and so beautiful and so transparent. This Yellow Ochre Natural. It just feels like so gentle, like velvet or something. I love painting with it. And it is so easy to re-wet. I have no problem getting a nice pigmentation. It's not grainy, it's not chalky. It looks very vibrant and alive. I really love this color. Next is Quin Gold Deep PO48. This color is very rusty. It's more or less what you'd expect from this pigment. Very saturated, not weak at all, and extremely high dispersion. It just shoots across there. Next is Burnt Sienna Nacho. This is another color that I really, really love. I love the natural version of these colors because they're both really gentle. You can see, that's crazy. Like, what earth colors have that kind of movement on the page? It doesn't even want to stay put. It's going into the dispersion section, so I have to like mop it up. It's a really gentle brown. Yeah, like, look at that. It just takes over all the space, and some people might not like that, but it's pretty impressive for me to see an earth color moving like that. Next is Pyro Red Light, and this is like your basic mid-red. It's very bright. You can see those little fingers that a lot of people talk about in the dispersion in this color. It almost looks like parts of coral or something like that. Next, PR177 Permanent Alizarin Crimson. This is going to be a kind of deeper red, almost like a Pyrenean maroon. It's kind of purpley, kind of wine-ish sort of color. It also shows those little fingers, and it doesn't have quite the kind of dispersion as some of the other colors do. It's a really nice, deep, almost lipstick or wine sort of color. Next is Quinacridone Magenta. You know, it's one of those colors that I have to have on my palette. And I was really impressed with QoR's version of this color. It's very, very bright. I mean, it's you can look at that. It's just so strong and powerful. You know, very little bit goes a really long way. I think you can just touch the tip of your brush into it and you have tons of color. So this is a color that I have actually never used before. Why? Because of the light fastness. But the thing that I think is really interesting, wait, just look at this. Just look at that color. I love this color, can you tell? Oh man. While the majority of brands have questionable light fastness for dioxazine purple, QoR actually specifically had their formulation of the dioxazine purple tested, and it was found to have an excellent light fastness. And I asked them about this, and they said that it's just because they chose the best source of dioxazine purple as they possibly can, and they're trying to put it together in the best way that they possibly can. Normally, the purple that I use is Quin Violet, and that's also a really pretty color, but there's just something about QoR's dioxazine purple that I really enjoy, and I think I've been using it a lot for doing my underpaintings for people recently. Next is Ultramarine Blue. That's, you know, everybody knows ultramarine blue. That's not a new color, but it's an interestingly granulating color in a line that doesn't seem to have very much granulation. I guess they wanted to keep the characteristics that everybody associates with ultramarine in this paint. It's pretty standard, pretty normal amount of dispersion, pretty normal color. Next is Phthalo Blue. So Phthalo Blue is always pretty extra, very pigmented, very saturated, very staining. And this time it's no different. The hue is actually very much like other Phthalo Blues that I've ever tried. This one I think is pretty normal color. Then the last two colors we have are Sap Green and Payne's Gray. I don't use mixed greens generally, but their Sap Green is actually very pretty, even though it has 3 different pigments in it. It's almost like olivey, foresty. It's not too extreme, it's kind of muted, and it moves very well on the page. Then the Payne's Gray. I've also never used the Payne's Gray before, but I feel like there's just such a range in the tinting strength in this gray. I don't think I even cared about it that much when I did this swatch, but I've been painting with it a lot, and it can get so dark, and yet it can also get so light and have just like a range from this deep inky black that you're basically seeing here to this beautiful kind of luminous blue. And it was very surprising to me. This is also one of my favorite colors in this set. So I just wanted to let you see me trying to do a little bit of lifting and how well that worked, which is it didn't. And it almost looks like I'm not doing anything. The only color that got any lifting on it at all was ultramarine. I'm even going back and trying. I'm trying hard. Nothing happened. These colors are extremely staining. That's just not a joke. If you want to be able to lift your colors afterwards, I think you should just stay away. This is on Fabriano Artistico cold press, and it was just not going anywhere. Not budging, staying put. So next I am doing a big old mixing chart, going to mix all of the colors together in the order that I just introduced them to you. And then I'm also going to do this funny color wheel that I have here, and I'm going to do a warm and cool mixture of all the colors. So I have seen some reviews where people were saying that when you mix the colors together, they lose a lot of their vibrancy. And I'm really not seeing that at all. I was pretty surprised. All the colors are very bright, all very vibrant. The intensity doesn't go down when you mix them. For sure, in this chart, you're going to see that there are a lot of darks that you can mix without using the Payne's Gray. So the first line was the Hansa yellow, next is the nickel azul yellow, mixing with all of the other colors. There's not a huge difference between these two colors, so the mixes are pretty similar. Although already you can see with the dioxazine violet, you have this very dark purple mixing with the nickel azul yellow, and mixing with the Hansel yellow, you have a kind of like grayish color. I thought it was really interesting, the sort of gray that you get when you mix the yellow ochre with the ultramarine. Of course, an orange and a blue neutralize each other, but I wasn't expecting that to happen, and I don't think I've ever seen that happen myself. I think it's really pretty and gentle. I'm doing a lot of cleaning. This is a lot of swatching. So this is Quinn Gold Deep, and especially when you mix that with ultramarine, you can get this really dark black. So if you only had the 12 introductory set, you're pretty set there on making grays and blacks. Now here's the burnt sienna. Once again, that definitely neutralizes well with the ultramarine, and it actually makes an interesting kind of like olivey green with the sap green that's included. That pyro red is like super duper bright. And I love the brown that it makes with the ultramarine blue. It also makes a really nice brown with the sap green. So this chart is getting more and more. I just wanted to show you my palette. It's just so full of pigment, and I just really love this color before I'm going to clean it out. It's this deep, luxurious purple that I really, really loved. And you can even see as it's drying, it doesn't get less in saturation at all. It just stays this very luscious color. The quinacridone magenta is very much capable of mixing some very, very powerful colors. And I'm going to say it again. I love all of the mixes that you're getting with this dioxazine violet. I feel like it's a very versatile color that I didn't expect at all before trying out this set and swatching for all of these charts. Just wanted to show you a couple of the darks that you're able to get. So now I'm going to do this pretty weird color wheel. So let me explain. On the outside ring, we have the cool colors, and on the inside ring, we have the warm colors. So for the yellow, I have Hands of Yellow. This is a cool yellow. And I have the Permanent Alizarin Crimson for the cool red, and Phthalo Blue for the cool blue. For the warm, I have Nickel Azo Yellow, and I have Pyro Red Light, and Ultramarine Blue. So I wanted to do that since I have both primaries. I wanted to show you what colors you can get just using those 6 colors, because obviously certain combinations are going to make the most optimal colors. The Hansa Yellow and the Phthalo Blue make a beautiful range of greens. And the Ultramarine and Nickel Azo also make a much more subdued but also beautiful kind of sap greeny, olive greeny sort of greens. You get these very intense oranges from the Hansa Yellow and the Alizarin Crimson. But also from the Nickel Azo and the Pyro Red. As usual, when you mix a warm blue and a warm red, you're not going to get a really nice purple. These are very muted colors. And then in the middle, I just put the dark. So just so that you can see them all better up close, all the colors, and the wide range that you can make. There's a lot of reds, but you also have your pockets of green, and you have your pockets of blues, and quite a lot of darks. You can see that ultramarine granulation goes in all of the colors that it's mixed with. Now, I wanted to do a comparison because that's the whole thing everybody's always talking about. They're comparing with different brands. So I have QoR, Amgram, Old Holland, and Schmincke for ultramarine blue, because everybody has a ton of ultramarine blues, or at least I do. I have a ton of ultramarine blues. So I wanted to do approximately the same amount. It's not very much. I had a little problem with the Amgram here. Some of the binder was coming out. And so I just wanted to see what the differences between them are. So I ended up adding a little bit to some of them because I think I squirted out a little more of one than the other, so I just tried to make it even. So I'm just spreading out the color. That's all. What kind of pigmentation can we get? As you can see, the core has no problem covering up this whole page. It's not like it's super light towards the bottom and I needed to add a lot of water. Now, where I feel like we had a problem is with the Old Holland. It is very light towards the bottom. It doesn't have nearly the kind of pigmentation that the other ones do. And surprisingly, neither the Schminke is also not quite as pigmented. Now I just wanted to do a single stroke, and this is with a synthetic brush, so it does dump, but I use the same brush for all of them to show you what you can expect on just a little bit of pigment, just one swipe of pigment. So the Old Holland is just completely gone by the end of that stroke. The Schminke is a lot less, but at least it's not just totally gone. Also, the Old Holland's a lot grayer than the other ones. Did you guys notice that before? I didn't. So the core is there. The core goes all the way down. It's just the brush that gave up. So one of the claims is that there is not a lot of shift between when the color is wet and when the color is dry. So I wanted to show you that. Here is a wet swatch of the core color on the left, and you're watching it dry. Does it look like it's changing a lot? I don't think so. It is drying before your eyes through the magic of television. Or YouTube. Still drying. Almost there. 1 second. Any changes? I know this is taking a while, but I really wanted to show you guys. And this is what it looks like wet. Basically the same. So now this is M grams phthalo blue. And you're going to do the same thing. We're going to watch it dry. The hue is almost exactly the same as it is for the core. I don't think that there is a huge color shift in the M gram, but I think that it is more significant than with the core. So this one took a lot longer, I think because of the honey in the M gram. So I had to wait a bit longer before I could go back in and paint the fresh swatch. But either way, the saturation is really nice on both of them. I don't think you have to worry with either brand for vibrancy or saturation. After a certain point, I don't really see any differences with the M gram either. I thought about cutting part of this, but I really just wanted you to see the entire span of it drying so that you can really see for yourself what is going on. It's extremely sped up. But you should still be able to see the characteristics of its drying. Okay, now I'm sure it's dried, and here's some fresh. This is a bit darker, but you can kind of see the difference, and here's the difference with the core. Alright, so what's core famous for? It's dispersion, like fireworks. It's just crazy. I don't even understand what's happening here, so I think that this is going to be one of my new favorite watercolors for making fireworks for sure. So a couple more color comparisons. Here's core versus Rembrandt in PY 150. Core versus M gram. I feel like the core in the PY 150 is much brighter than the Rembrandt. So right now the M gram is looking a lot darker, and I think that's because once M gram gets wet, it is just full of color. Here's the burnt sienna between Daniel Smith, Old Holland, and core. And the Old Holland version is obviously a lot redder than the Daniel Smith version. And the core version, I just feel like is much clearer than the other two versions. Here is the core P048. Clean Gold Deep. And here's the Daniel Smith Clean Gold Deep. I feel like even though I expected the Daniel Smith one to be much better because I consider it the original, the core one is actually a bit clearer and a bit less brownish. It's also much more even. Here's Smrinka's PR122 Quin Magenta. And here is core's. The hue is basically identical, but I feel like the core one is much more saturated than the Schminke version, much more. And finally, yellow ochre. Here's Schminke's yellow ochre. I laugh because it's so muddy. I really don't like this version. It's not a good example. Whereas core's is much more yellowish and transparent and just gentle. So here are all of the colors dried so you can see the differences. So as always, I am going to do a demo. But actually, before I did these, I painted a couple of other paintings with only using the core paints, and these are some portraits that I did for Black History Month. So this is Vivian Thomas. That was the very first painting that I did with the core paints, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I feel like they worked really well. That's Dr. Mae Jemison, and I used the way that the colors spread to make a galaxy in the background. The only thing that wasn't core there was the Fine Tech Gold. And then this is what I'm talking about with the Payne's Gray. The background is the yellow ochre. Isn't that just glorious? And then the face is done with Payne's Gray, and you can really see the range and the depth of colors that you can get there. It's really beautiful. So since I am dreaming of spring, I wish spring was coming, I decided to paint two crocuses. One is purple and one is yellow. So a lot of people say that these colors are really uncontrollable and not suited for extensive glazing. So that's really what I wanted to test here. I wanted to see if it's suitable for the way that I like to paint, which is with a lot of layers and not with extremely bold, bright colors. First of all, I was really surprised with how well the colors tint. I have read some people say that the colors are very chalky when you dilute them a lot with water, but I felt like they take very well to adding lots of water and they don't lose vibrancy. When you dilute them extremely thinly, they lose a lot of the vibrancy and they become extremely dull. I did not find that to be the case at all with these colors. I was really surprised. Actually, before the painting was done, I was just feeling so happy with how delicate it was looking. Also, the thing that I noticed about the staining of these colors is that they glaze extremely cleanly. Since the colors are not going to budge once you put them down, you don't have to worry about them coming up again when you glaze. So if you have trouble with that when you're glazing, these are definitely a good paint for you to try out because almost all of the colors are extremely staining. So they'll stay put and they'll make it a lot easier for you to be getting clean glazes. But even though they're really staining, I didn't have any trouble moving the color around and getting hard edges. So that was really surprising and really pleasing to see. Maybe if you move a little slower, you would have problems with this. I'm not a super fast painter, but I know that I tend to use 2 brushes, so that makes it a little easier for me. I'm using actually a lot of that yellow ochre in the yellow crocus on the right, and you can see it doesn't muddy up the yellow at all. It still looks very warm and glowing. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is so special about these colors. I think a lot of people feel like the price is very high for what they are, and they don't really get what is so special about QoR colors. When Golden came out with QoR, they were really trying to do something different. And part of the way that they did that is through using the binder Aquazol. So this binder is used by people who are conserving artwork. And the reason why it is used is partially because it is water soluble. So that means that if you have to change something in the future, any edits that you made in the conservation are reversible. That's pretty important. And also, Aquazol doesn't yellow over time. Gum Arabic is kind of yellowish. It's not exactly clear. And over time, that yellow becomes more and more yellow. So you're not seeing the pure pigment on the paper. You start seeing more and more of the gum Arabic. So by making a watercolor that uses Aquazol, you have a watercolor that even if you're using already light fast pigments, it's going to be a paint that's going to stay even more true to the color over time. So to me, I feel like that is part of what you're paying for when you're paying for QoR watercolors. You're paying for paints that will definitely stand the test of time. And you're paying for paints that are in some cases much more light fast than their peers. For example, with the dioxazine violet. This is definitely the dioxazine violet that I would recommend to anyone because it's the only one that actually has its own formula tested to be excellent. One of the other things that Aquazol allows you to do is that it allows you to use watercolor more thickly. Now, that's not really something that I'm interested in, but if you have ever wanted to do a sort of more impasto look or like have some more experimental ways of working with watercolor, or you want to work with it on different surfaces, this is really great. I'm going in and putting these lines. Normally, you should put these lines in at the end. Details are always at the very end. But I wanted to put these in because I was kind of curious what would happen if I put these lines in and then I painted on top of them. Since, like I said, these colors are so staining, I was curious whether I would just make a big mess by painting on top of them, or if the staining abilities of these colors allows me a little more flexibility about when I want to put in my details, and if I can just like have them stay there without worrying about them bleeding all over the page. So you'll see the results of that pretty soon. Another thing that's unique about the QoR watercolors is that they use synthetic oxgall. So there are watercolors that don't use oxgall at all, for example, Holbein, but those colors tend not to move very much on the page, and for some people that makes them a little more difficult to work with or not as interesting to work with. Obviously, QoR has no issue moving on the page whatsoever. I asked them about why they decided to develop a synthetic oxgall, and one of the reasons is that it just makes a more consistent, high-quality product. When you're working with things derived from animals, things can vary based on how the animal was doing and different other things. But when you have it made in the lab, it is consistent every time, or at least it should be. It's also beneficial not to have to rely on animal products at all. So if you're staying away from things like lamp black, this is a really good option for a vegan watercolor. Now I'm just adding in some little deeper veins and other colors. I think this is a mixture of dioxazine violet and quinacridone magenta and maybe some kind of blue in there. I've used basically all of the yellows on this crocus here, the yellow ochre, the nickel azo, the Hansa yellow. I'm deepening the shadows in the purple crocus with a kind of grayish ultramarine blue mixture. And as you can see, the lines are staying put. It's amazing. They're not going anywhere. I was so shocked. So to me, part of the thing about what you're paying for when you're paying for QoR is sort of like what you're getting when you're paying for the Caran d'Ache Museum watercolor pencils. You're paying for something that's very high quality and that is very light fast. Because when you compare the performance of the Faber-Castell and the Caran d'Ache, just from looking at it, they're actually both just amazing pencils. But you pay more for the Caran d'Ache because of the light fastness and the durability of it. And I feel like that is what I would be paying for with the QoR colors as well. A lot of it is the light fastness. I think the performance is up to par with other professional grade watercolors, and in some cases better depending on the pigment. Like a lot of brands, there's some colors that they do better and some colors that are worse, but I haven't disliked any of the colors in the brand. There are a couple that I'm definitely adding to my main palette. I also just really like knowing that I was working with a company that was extremely transparent. Any questions I had for them, they answered. They were extremely generous with their time and extremely honest. And I think that that's also very important. They also regularly test their paints to make sure that their standards are up to what they expect from them. And if they find that something is not very light fast, for example, they'll remove it from their lineup. And I can't really think of any other brands that do that on a regular basis. And so that's very impressive to me. Finally, here I'm adding, I think, a little bit of burnt sienna just to warm up the inside. And we're done. So I really, really enjoyed working with these watercolors, even more than I expected to. I was actually a little nervous based on a lot of the reviews that I saw out there, but I think that these colors are really great. I would definitely recommend them. Obviously, when I did the brand comparison, you can see that they are definitely head-to-head with other brands. I don't think that in terms of what you can see on the page, the QoR watercolors are some kind of magical, mystical watercolors. I really like the dispersion, and if you're into this kind of painting, I think that that is great. I think that the tinting strength is surprisingly amazing. I think that the colors are extremely staining, which for some people who like to lift can be a definitely no-go. But if you're looking for colors that will stay put on the page, this is great. The biggest downsides that I see are the price and the size of the tubes. And like I said, I think that for me, that comes down to next level light fastness. I'm a big proponent of supporting smaller companies. This is not exactly a small company, but they are a company that is majority employee owned. That combined with what seems to be a dedication to improving their product and transparency. Besides, of course, just the straight up quality of these paints makes me recommend them. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this review. I hope that it was informative. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Do you guys like QoR paints? Do you like them better than any other paints? Why or why not? Let me know. Thank you guys for watching. Shout out to my Patreons. Thank you for supporting me. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. See you next time. Bye.